So let's talk about this Spurs versus Mavericks game. As we saw yesterday, the Spurs and Mavericks faced off. Obviously, these two teams are varying in expectations. One is a young team, which is the Spurs, which just wants to get their legs out there, develop Wembanyama, and see what works. And another one is a hopeful championship contender in the Dallas Mavericks with guys like Grant Williams, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, really headlining their franchise. As we see this matchup yesterday, it was a very good matchup. As we saw, these two teams battle back and forth between each other, and honestly, it was one of the best games that we could have asked for. It was close up until the very end. Like the Dallas really had to run it. San Antonio scored 43 points in the first quarter. And then they outscored them. Then Dallas outscored San Antonio in every other quarter. But really, it was, if you saw the game, you could tell that it was closer than expected. In my opinion, what we saw from this game was a very good Spurs team. They worked very well. Their pieces are very, they have a lot of continuity because you could see that, Sohan plays his role. Devin Vassell has just been a monster recently, and I do want to say that. And obviously, we have Victor Wembanyama now, which is a clear superstar. And let's talk about this game. So first, I want to talk about, the Spurs, obviously. I want to talk about Victor. Victor in this game had 15 points, a block on Kyrie Irving, which was really good. 2 steals, 2 assists, and 5 rebounds, going 6 for 9 from the field and 3 of 5 from 3. Now, this is a really good stat line for a first game. He didn't overcompensate. He didn't do like Kristaps and drop 30, in his first game of the season. But he definitely had an effective game, especially against a great team in the Dallas Mavericks. But in my opinion, the biggest thing from this game with Wembanyama was how little touches he actually got. I don't know if this is Popovich, not wanting to give him all of the superstar role, originally trying to save him and make sure that he's accustomed to real NBA competitive basketball before throwing him as just the number one option. I don't know if this is his team basically retaliating against him because they're not going to let him bring up the ball up the floor. Like a guy that tall needs to be either in the paint or since he can shoot in the three-point line. But Victor Wembanyama in this game was really passive, It was due to his team, obviously, which he did not get the ball a lot, especially in the final minutes where most of his points had already been scored. And in the final minutes of the fourth quarter, he didn't even get a shot or he didn't even make a play. As we saw Wembanyama this game, he was extremely passive, and I think that's more because they're trying to accustom him to real NBA. It's obvious that he's good and that he can actually play in the league, but I do think that the Spurs want to make him prove himself, right? Not give him every single possession and every single touch, because it's obvious that the Spurs want to create a winner who works for their wins, not a guy who's pampered to win always or be expected to win but not win in the end. And in my opinion, this is great as we see this team and as we've seen other great players like LeBron and stuff. Their first games are also like this. They normally start on the lower end, and that's, in my opinion, is very cool. Like the fact that we can see these teams be great and these players who will probably, well, I'm saying probably for obviously Victor, but who are generational talents start off with such passive games. As I said, there was a report that came out that he had the same that he had the same statistics as Tim Duncan in his first game, and we all know that Tim Duncan is one of the greatest players of all time, and that shouldn't be a controversial take. So, let's talk about the actual game itself. For the Mavericks, the winners of this game, I do believe that they were very effective, shooting very well from the field, which is really what put them on the top. They shot 30% from 3, 32% to be exact. But they shot 47.5% from the field. That means that for every 3-pointer they shot, they at least had to go and make like 2 layups to make the percentage be good again, which in my opinion shows that the Mavericks are doing pretty good. This win mostly came at the hands of Luka Doncic, which scored a triple-double in his first game in Luka fashion, with 33 points, 10 assists, 13 rebounds with 2 steals and only 4 turnovers. An amazing game by Doncic. Also, he scored the game-winning triple when he hit a step-back 3 to basically put them up. I think it was 6 or 8 and basically seal the game. And in my opinion, when we see this team, this Mavericks team, it's going to be dangerous. I want to say first, obviously, shout out to Derek Lively. He was the star of this game. He got 8 shots up, and he made 7 of them. He's having 16 points, 10 rebounds, and meanwhile playing 31 minutes in this game. I do want to say that probably Derek Lively will become their best player. Not their best player, but their best center by the end of the season if he keeps playing like this so effectively and making the right decisions. And he was a big reason why they won this game in the end. Though a couple of things that I want to say, right, is first, why did Richaun Holmes not play? He's a good player. He's averaged 3 points last season, but he did it on 60% from the field. And it's not about Richaun Holmes that I'm talking about. It's more like Seth Curry played 4 minutes, didn't get a shot up. Dante Exum played 8 minutes, got 2 shots up. Like Tim Hardaway, even though he played 28 minutes and got 14 shots up, he's a guy who last year was a starter and he's getting barely any minutes. Derrick Jones Jr., a starter, had 12 minutes, and then you have like Monte Morris on the bench. Markieff Morris. I'm sorry, Markieff Morris, which also didn't get any minutes. And in my opinion, even though yes they won, like, why are you not playing your other players? Like, it's the first game of the season and Kyrie got played 36 minutes. That's concerning, and that probably shouldn't happen because by the 50th game, we all know that something could happen to those players. So I would say that probably Jason Kidd mixed that lineup up because playing a 10 player rotation where 2 of them didn't even get 10 minutes or above is kind of, it's kind of crazy if I'm being 1,000% honest. But I want to say shout out to Kyrie, even though he wasn't the most efficient, he still did his thing with 22.6 assists and 2 rebounds with 1 steal. Obviously his team won, so it's easy to look at that in a good light. And Maxi Kleber had a Maxi Kleber game. Finally, I want to talk about Grant Williams before I, segue. Grant Williams is great. He shot 50% from 3, 6 for 11 from the field, 6 rebounds, 1 offensive, 1 block, 17 points. Amazing, a really amazing game, by Grant Williams. And I believe that he was probably the piece that they needed for this starting lineup. Finally, I just want to say, shout out to the Spurs. That Spurs team looks great. They just look like a young team. I'm sorry. They could just go out there. They can play the game. They can play the right way, and they can really, make fans entertained. I believe that it was good signing Devin Vassell. I really like Devin Vassell. I think he's a great player. I think that Keldon Johnson, also another great player, and guys like Sohan, that you see them can space the floor, can do everything for you. And even the center, Zach Collins, which even though he missed 4 threes, he went 6 for 6 from the 2-point line, hitting both of his free throws. So, in my opinion, I do want to say shout out to this team, shout out to the Spurs, and hopefully next game, Wembanyama could get some more touches in the final quarters and just in the entire game in general. What I do want to point out about this game, I'm sorry, but this is the last thing, is that the Mavericks only won by 7. And I want us to keep an eye out on that because it either means that the Mavericks are going to be horrible this year, because the Spurs were the worst team in the league last year, or it means that the Spurs are going to be really good. So I'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see how the season plays out. But I really like the Spurs versus Mavericks game. Tell me what you think, and tell me what you would change or what you really didn't like about this game. I'll see you in the next video.